We can acknowledge that we all are different while recognizing that we have the same common enemy, and that the way that we are going to defeat this enemy is by working together. Hey y'all, it is Jay Nice on the back. I was gonna say I'm back on the mic, back with another video. So this is video 2 of my new YouTube series called Resistance in the Age of Mass Surveillance. The purpose of this series is to talk about what resistance can look like in a time where we are all being heavily tracked, monitored, and surveilled. And what we're going to be talking about today is a lot of what I discuss in more detail in my new book called Rise and Resist, which will be out in the world on February 24th, 2026. What we're going to be talking about in today's video is coalition building as a form of resistance. So what can coalition building look like, and what is coalition building, right? Coalition building, the way I see it, is like finding the community of people that are all committed to the goal of creating change and of resistance, right? So how do you go about building that coalition, finding your people? Because resistance in this age requires community, and we have to find our people and connect with our people. And so the first thing I would say is definitely leaning on social media only to help you build coalitions, right? Social media, we all know the ills of social media, and we all know how social media can monitor, track, and surveil us as well. But social media can be a really powerful tool in helping us to build coalitions and find our people. So we all hear people saying, know your neighbors, know your neighbors. That's important, but what does that look like? I think if you have a HOA, a homeowners association that you're part of, you should definitely join. If you own a house or a condo or any sort of property, I think you should be active in your homeowners association. I think you should also utilize resources like Eventbrite and Meetup. I feel like when I first moved to New York, I was on Meetup, right? I don't think I ever actually went to a Meetup, but I was on Meetup just looking up events because I wanted to find my people. And so Meetup still exists, and it's a great way to find people in your community that are like-minded and share the same interests as you, and that you can meet up with and connect with and build coalitions and community. There are also like virtual, since COVID, there have been a lot more like virtual meetups. So Meetup is a great resource, and Eventbrite, both of these are free. Whenever I have like friends or family coming in and they want to visit New York City and they want to see the sights, what I used to do is I used to go on Eventbrite and I would see like, what are some free events that are happening that sound interesting and seem like, they would be fun to go to. So Eventbrite and Meetup are great resources when it comes to coalition building, right? In your state, if you're somebody, for example, who believes in housing justice, every state should have some sort of housing justice coalition, and they have like online meetings. I haven't been able to go to a lot of them, but they have online meetings about like zoning laws and the new things that are happening specifically in my local community. So look for resources like that, right? I don't think it's enough to tell people, know your neighbors, because for everybody that's not going to be feasible, right? Especially if you're somebody who's homebound, if you have a disability that requires you to be in the house. Actually physically going out and knowing your neighbors isn't always possible. I think that's great if you are able to get to know your neighbors. Most of my neighbors, I have their contact information or I have their phone numbers. It snowed here recently. We got like a huge blizzard in the Northeast, and where I live, there's always like parking issues, and we got an email from the place where I live that basically said like everybody has to have their cars out of a certain area so that the snow plow can come in. And one of my neighbors didn't get that email. She didn't get the email, so her car was parked exactly where it wasn't supposed to be parked. So I called her and she had no idea, and she was so thankful. And so it's just important to have your neighbors' numbers, their contact information. In case anything goes down, you want to be able to contact them. And also you could have a lot in common with the people that live near you. And it's important when you're building coalitions and you're building community for you to connect with the people that live in close proximity to you. It's also important to engage people in conversations and not be afraid to do that. I'm somebody that, because the work that I do is, I have a lot of conversations with workplace leaders around barriers in the workplace that prevent employees from thriving. And so when I'm on a plane, for example, or I'm on a train, it feels exhausting to talk about and to engage with people, period. So sometimes even when I'm in an Uber, I just want to chill and I don't want to engage. But I recognize that there is power in small talk. And when you're on an elevator with somebody, I'm highly extroverted. I like to talk. I'm very verbose. And I try to engage people in conversations because you learn a lot. And that is also an interestingly subtle way to build coalition, because you might find that there are people who believe in the same things that you believe, or that you are able to shift their perspective and their way of thinking through a conversation that you have with them. So I think also being open to the opportunity to engage people in conversations is important. So in my book, Rise and Resist, I talk about Fred Hampton. And we all know Fred Hampton because he was the chairman of the Black Panther Party. So Fred Hampton was instrumental in spearheading the Rainbow Coalition, which was a community of people from different walks of life, right? There were Black folks, there were poor white, working class whites, there were the Young Lords, which were a Spanish group. And he brought all of them together because they all had the same interests, right? And so when you're building coalitions, it's important to make sure that you are clear in what your objectives and your goals are. It's important for people to understand that we all have the same goals of dismantling oppressive systems, because what may be needed from you is helping people to understand how oppressive systems are harmful to them. One of the things that's hardest about engaging in equity work, helping people to understand that these oppressive systems, right? White perversion, I don't call it white supremacy, but white perversion, white delusion, patriarchy, capitalism, all of these systems harm us in different ways and in myriad ways. And so I think what made the Rainbow Coalition so successful was that Fred Hampton was able to help the members understand that though we come from different walks of life, we have the same goal, which is dismantling these oppressive systems which harm us all. I think we need to understand, what we need to understand is that the Black Panthers were for and in favor of solidarity with all oppressed people. So this idea that the Black Panthers would not or should not be in solidarity with folks who are not Black American is just not accurate to who the Black Panthers actually were. So I do feel like that needs to be mentioned, and it's important for us to understand that whether you are Black American, whether you are a descendant of Cameroonians, Nigerian, Caribbean, whatever you are, we have the same enemy, and the same oppressive systems harm all of us. And so by coming together and building a coalition of people who want to dismantle this system that oppresses us all, we are more powerful and there's more strength in numbers. But I think what the opposition is doing a really effective job at is making us feel like we should be fighting and warring with each other when actually we have the same common enemy. And coalition building requires us to help people understand that we have the same goal, we have the same objectives, and we should be working collectively to dismantle the systems that oppress and harm us all. And I will say that I think that it's important for Black Americans to be able to delineate and to indicate that there are differences between people who are descendants of enslaved people. There's generational trauma that comes with that lineage that maybe folks like me, whose family immigrated through their own free will to this country, don't experience. And so I do want to acknowledge that. And I've talked about this actually, that Black is not a monolith. I wrote an article a couple years ago about this. And so I do want to mention that Another person that I mention in this book is Ella Baker. Ella Baker was part of the NAACP, and she was the brainchild behind the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And she was also part of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And she was actually like one of the founding members of SNCC, which is the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And one of the things that she really pushed for is not propping up leaders, right? Within justice work or equity work or civil rights, she really believed that the power was in the people and not in charismatic leaders. So she was all about like not propping up individuals and recognizing that the power is in the hands of the people. And Malcolm X said this, and I've quoted Malcolm X so many times in my articles, where he's talked about how within the Black community, celebrities are our leaders, and celebrities are the folks that we follow and that we look to, and we shouldn't actually be following these people, right? I just saw something about LeBron James and some problematic partnership he has, and I like LeBron James, and I'll post it right here. But I think that this just provides more evidence to us that we should not look to celebrities within the Black community as if they are, or they should be, our leaders. And I think that we need to divest A, from the idea of celebrity, and B, we should not focus on propping up charismatic leaders, because I think that when we do that, we make it easier to destruct the group, because if the group functioning relies on these charismatic leaders, when these leaders are no longer here, when they get assassinated like Fred Hampton, then that impacts the viability of the group. So Ella Baker really reminded us that the power is in the hands of the people. And I think as we're building coalitions, we should be very leery of any people who are propping themselves up to the front or who are centering themselves in the group or in the coalition, because it's really easy to start centering yourself and to lose sight of the goals and the objectives of the group when you are propped up as a leader. You also want to think about what accountability systems look like in your coalition, right? There should always be some sort of accountability system. We should be accountable to each other. And I know that there is a saying that you can only be accountable to the people you're in community with, which I agree with. So we should all be thinking about accountability systems in the communities and coalitions that we're building. We all cause harm and we all engage in harm. And what does repair look like? What does rectifying the harm that we are causing look like? And so these are things that are important for us to also be thinking about. Adrienne Maree Brown, who has this book called We Will Not Cancel Us. And in the book, she talks about how quick we are, especially those of us who are people of the global majority, to shun and to discard folks that look like us because they engage in harm. But what would it look like if we operated under a mindset of repair and accountability versus discarding people who caused or created harm? And so I do think that that's important as we're building our coalitions, to think about what reparation and repairs look like when harm inevitably happens. Because in any community, in any coalition, in any group, there's going to be harm, there's going to be disputes, there's going to be discord. And what does it look like to repair that harm, to engage in conversations? I know that they're uncomfortable. We all have to engage in these uncomfortable conversations we don't want to address things and to repair things, even in our friendships, right? I had a situation where I had to have some uncomfortable conversations with some friends of mine who did things that hurt my feelings. And I did not want to have these conversations. I was avoiding them. But I realized that if I want to be in community with these people, I have to be able to have these conversations so that they understand I felt hurt, and here are ways that you can prevent this from happening in the future. And how do you repair? How do you go about repairing the harm that you've caused? And so thinking about accountability systems within these coalitions that we're building is imperative. We have to remember that we're stronger together, and that a house divided cannot stand. And so I think that we've been spending so much time arguing about who's really black, who's this, who's that, that I think that we are exhausting ourselves, and to me it's not an effective use of our time. We can acknowledge that we all are different while recognizing that we have the same common enemy, and that the way that we are going to defeat this enemy is by working together, right? And so I think that coalition building is imperative, where whiteness culture requires us to be divided and to feel like my neighbor is not also somebody that I should care about or somebody that I should consider. In the age of mass surveillance, we should be building communities on social media, but taking them offline. I've been thinking about connection and community a lot because one of my close friends was affected by the Verizon outage that happened a couple weeks ago. And I remember I sent something to her, and I was just reaching out to her to make sure she got it. And all of a sudden she stopped responding. The text bubbles were turning green, and I got so worried, and I was like, what is happening? This is not like her. She's very responsive. And it made me think about, like, how would I contact people and build coalition if social media and the internet did not exist? And I think that coalition building requires us to know people's numbers, right? Think about how many people's numbers do you know by heart? Carry around some sort of address book. I know it's like not a thing that we do anymore, but do you have an address book where you have people's phone numbers? Do you know anybody's numbers by heart? Can you start remembering people's numbers by heart? Right? I know my family members' numbers by heart. Some of them who change numbers a lot, I don't know by heart, but there's some key family members whose numbers I know by heart. So it's important for you to know people's numbers by heart. And think about how you would contact people if the grid went out, right? If the cell phone towers were not working, you were not able to use the internet to contact people, how would you build coalition? And think about that, right? I've been thinking about a landline, and I know it's very old school, but so many of us are going back to analog life. There have been so many videos about people who are getting the dumb phones, and they are going back to a time when everything wasn't so digitized, right? Because the digitization of everything has made everything like a commodity, and we have to capitalize on everything. And I saw a video where somebody said companies make us feel lonely, and then they're going to sell us community back, or sell community back to us. And I do think that that is so spot on. But we have to think about, like, in the event that the grid went out, your cell phone wasn't working, how would you contact people? And we have to operate under the assumption that that will happen, and those types of things can happen. Cyber attacks are not outside the realm of possibility, especially during these times. So we have to think about these things and operate from the mindset of people that do want to build and sustain community, and what that can look like. So that is where I'm going to leave off today's video. Thank y'all so much for watching. I hope that you found this video insightful. And if you want to learn more, make sure to pick up my new book, Rise and Resist, or pre-order. It comes out February 24th. I love y'all. I appreciate your support. And I will see y'all in the next video. Of course, do the likes and subscribes. And as I'm building my YouTube channel back, y'all know I've been away for like a year, and the algorithm penalizes you for being away. So I'm trying to get back consistent, and I'm in my flow. So if y'all could share this video with people who will enjoy it, and be sure to like the video, subscribe, all of that, it would be super duper helpful. And I love y'all. I appreciate your support, and I will see you in the next video.